You know, I was just worrying that, look, the stuff we're doing is awfully heavy in one sense. If you're here for the very first time, and this is like the first thing you've ever come to, we have plunged you right into the depths of biblical teaching. And I am so impressed that you guys are staying with us. We had a few other options. We were thinking of a topic like adolescent sexuality and how to have fun. And we thought, you know, that would get everybody's interest. Or coping with disasters in my life. Session 1, I've got pimples. Session 2, I've got to have braces. Session 3, how do I survive my parents? We thought about all that, and all that is good and lovely, but we thought, let's actually do something dangerous. Let's bring you face to face with the living God. Let's take you into one of the deepest and most bizarre sections of the Bible, that you might see what is happening in the universe, that you might get a bigger picture of God than you've ever got before, and that you'll be able to respond to him in a way that you've never done. So can I just say thank you for hanging in with us, and every day we want to take you one step further, because God's got big things in mind for every single one of us. And you see, the good thing about doing it at a camp is that we're all here together. You are surrounded by a bunch of crazy people who are actually on your side. So if right now you're feeling a little bit lost in the whole thing, if things have not been working well for you, or if you're on top of the world, there's a whole stack of people that are on your side who are working with you. And that's one of the brilliant things about belonging to God's people. You don't have to face it by yourself. And I just love it when I'm in a situation like this, and I know that everybody is on my side. But what does it feel like when you realise that everybody is against you? I can remember when I was a little boy, I played football, the game that the Americans would call soccer, that game. That was the game I played. And I was a fairly average, actually not that good, in fact fairly terrible soccer player. And so the coach sort of put up with me, and when we were little kids, like under 9s, we had a really good goalkeeper. Very talented little goalkeeper, but unfortunately he was the short, fat little kid. You know, sometimes they put the short, fat little kid in goals, and he was in goals, and he was quite a good goalkeeper, but he was incredibly short and he was incredibly fat. I mean, he was one of those sort of roly-poly characters, you know. Could have auditioned for a part in South Park. One of those sort of guys. I mean, this guy was so short, he had to blow his nose through his fly. Just a little kid. When we were all little, it didn't matter, but as we sort of went from primary school to high school, he didn't grow. And the opposition soon discovered that even though he was a good goalkeeper, they could shoot the ball anywhere in the top third of the goal, and he couldn't reach it. So the coach had this brainwave of getting one of the taller boys to be the new goalkeeper. And in year 7, I was one of those kids that grew a little bit ahead of all my friends. I was the tallest. And so suddenly, I'm the new goalkeeper. Now, you've got to have a death wish to be a goalkeeper in soccer. Because I suddenly realised the entire opposition was opposed to me. Everybody on the opposing side was trying to belt that ball at me and through me and past me. And for the first time in my life, I realised the entire opposing team was opposing me. To add to my problems, I wasn't a very good goalkeeper. And in my first 5 matches, I let in around 1 squillion goals. And the result of that was my entire team was also against me. They hated me because I wasn't a very good goalkeeper, and I suddenly found everybody was opposed to me, and I hated it. And I bet you hate it when you find that people are opposed to you and stacked up against you. You know, you're in class and, you know, the teacher's doing something. Everybody's just talking a little bit. But when the teacher turns around, everybody's talking, but you're the one that gets picked on. Well, Freddie, if you've got something to say, perhaps you'd like to share it with the whole class. And suddenly everybody's eyes are on you and you think, oh my goodness, I'm being targeted here. I'm being lined up. Or you're hanging around with some of your friends and there's some poor kid being picked on and made fun of, and you're sort of joining in and it's all fine until the biggest, toughest kid in your group looks at you and says, hey, fathead, what are you laughing at? And then suddenly everyone is picking on you. And you know what it's like when people turn against you and you realise that people are absolutely opposed to you. Now, what about if the devil took you on, one-on-one? What about if you worked out that the devil was absolutely opposed to you? That he was lining up all his battle plans against you? What would that be like? If the devil took you on, do you think you could survive? If the devil took you on, would you come out on top? If the devil decided to target you, do you think you'd stay being a Christian? When the book of Revelation is written, that's the situation that God's people are in. They feel like the devil has targeted them specifically, and they're trying to work out, can we survive this? Is there any way that we can get through this? And I want to take you to a section of the Bible today which takes us to the very heart of this battle between the devil and God. What would happen if Satan locked his crosshairs onto you? What would happen if you were in direct line of the devil's attacks? Well, let's have a look at Revelation chapter 12, which you already know so well because it's been dramatically presented for us by our drama team. Let's have a look at it. Have you got it there? Revelation chapter 12. Let's introduce the characters. It says, a great and wondrous sign appeared in heaven. A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on his head. Now, if you're just visiting us for the first time today, you're thinking, what on earth are they talking about? Let's introduce the 3 characters which are in this story. Firstly, in verse 1, there is a woman. Verse 1, a woman clothed with the sun. Then in verse 2, you can't quite see this person yet, but he's there because she's pregnant and she's about to give birth. So the second person in the story is a baby. The third one is in verse 3, an enormous red dragon. So you've got the 3 characters. Let's try and work out who they are. We'll start with the baby because I think this one is the most obvious. If we go down to verse 5, we'll actually find out who the baby is. Verse 5. She gave birth to a son. That's your first clue. A male child, just in case you didn't know what a son was. Here we are. Who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter. Now, does that remind you of anyone? Are you thinking, has a boy been born who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter? And you're thinking, that's Jesus. So the baby is Jesus being born. Okay, what about the dragon? Well, you'll be pleased to know that down in verse 9, the dragon is identified. Look at verse 9. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent. Now there's your first clue. You're thinking a serpent from a story in the Bible. You're thinking Garden of Eden. The serpent was there to tempt Adam and Eve. And if that's not a good enough clue, the next one, he's called the devil or Satan. He leads the whole world astray. It's obvious who the dragon is. That's Satan. We've got Jesus being born. We've got Satan. Now, who's the woman? Now, if you're thinking about this one, you're thinking there's a woman give birth to Jesus. I guess the woman would be Mary. Well, just before you lock in your final answer, let's just double check that. Let's go back to verse 1. A great and wondrous sign appeared. A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. Now, it's just sounding like this is more than just an individual. This doesn't sound like an ordinary human being. And I'll give you the clue. a crown of 12 stars on her head. Now, when you see the number 12 in apocalyptic literature, you're thinking 12 means the people of God. This woman represents the people of God. It's the people of God who give birth to Jesus. It's not just one girl called Mary. There's a whole heritage, there's a whole lineage all the way from Adam right through that God had promised that his people would give birth to a saviour. So there's the three characters, the baby, the woman and the dragon. Let's see what happens, because I have got access to Satan's strategy book. Satan's got a game plan as to how he's going to attack the world, and we've been given access to it. And I want to show you Satan's battle plans so that you're ready for him when he comes for you. Battle number one, battle plan number one, get Jesus. Let's look what happens in this story. We'll start in halfway through verse 4. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth, that he might devour her child the moment it was born. So can you picture that? At the moment Jesus is being born, Satan is there wanting to devour the child, wanting to destroy Jesus, wanting to get rid of him before he can live a life of serving God, wanting to get rid of him before he can go to that cross, wanting to get rid of him before he will rise from the dead. Now, you don't often see this pictured. When we had Christmas, there's all these little nativity scenes around. You know, there's Mary and Joseph and the little baby, the cows mooing in the background, the shepherds, the wise men, little drummer boy. All those biblical characters are there. You don't see a great red dragon. You don't see Satan himself waiting there for Jesus to be born, but the Bible tells us that's what was happening. His first battle plan was, if I can destroy Jesus before he goes to that cross, if I can destroy Jesus before he conquers death when he rises from the dead, then I've got the world in my hand. That was his plan, to snatch Jesus. Let's see what happens. Verse 5. She gave birth to a son, a male child, who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter. And her child was snatched up to God and to his throne. And you're thinking, when did that happen? That happened when Jesus ascended into heaven, and he's now in the heavenlies, safe at God's right hand. Does that make sense? Jesus' entire birth and childhood and ministry and teaching and miracles and his crucifixion and his resurrection and his ascension are all contained in that one little verse. That before Satan could get his hands on him, God rescued his son and protected him in heaven. What happens next? Verse 6. The woman, that's the people of God, the woman fled into the desert to a place prepared to her by God, where she might be taken care of for 1,260 days. Does it make sense? God protects the people of God. When Satan's battle plan number one fails, God makes sure his people are protected for 1,260 days. What's going on there? Quick calculations, how many years is that? Come on, you can do it. 4? A little less than 4, I think. Just under 3? 3.5, thank you. That's a roughly 3.5 years. And when you see the number 3.5, you're thinking, incomplete. This is God's protection, but it's not the final protection. There's an incompleteness about it. That is battle plan number one. Get Jesus. The result for the devil, total failure. Let's go to battle plan number 2. Get God. Verse 7. And there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. Do you see? Satan takes on God directly to try and wrestle the power. The result? Next verse. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil and Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. Pretty fast result. In fact, I think the drama team went too long with the battle. It wasn't really a battle at all. He takes him on, and the result? He wasn't strong enough. He loses his place in heaven. He absolutely fails. That means, verse 10, that the triumph, now have come the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God, the authority of our Christ, because the accuser of our brothers, who accuses them before our God day and night, has been hurled down. Satan is defeated, but did you catch that description of him? He is called the accuser of the brothers, that is, the accuser of Christians. And he stands before God day and night accusing you. Trying to say to God, look how much he's sinning, give up on him. He'll look down there at Nathan and accuse you before God and actually say, God, give up on him. He's not worth going with. He'll stand there and accuse Liam before God and saying, give up on him. Look at what he's doing. Look at what he's thinking. He's not good enough to be your son. And every one of you is being accused by Satan right now before God. And here's the good news. God is not listening to him. There is battle plan number 2, where Satan goes directly after God. And look down in verse 11. As he chases God's people, in verse 11 we read this. But they, Christians, overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. There is a victory here. Through the blood of the Lamb, Jesus being killed, and the word of our testimony. Every time we declare that victory to somebody else, it's another nail in Satan's coffin. Every time you are there with a friend saying something about your faith, that is another nail in Satan's coffin. Sorry about that. Satan's coffin. Let's get that right. There is victory for God's people because Satan's battle plan does not work. So there's rejoicing going on. Verse 12. Rejoice, you heavens, and all you dwell in them. But, here's the warning. Woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has gone down to you. He is filled with fury because he knows that his time is short. Battle plan number 1, get Jesus. Result, total failure. Battle plan number 2, get God. Result, total failure. So Satan now goes after the only thing that's left to get God's people. And can you see how furious he is? At the end of verse 12, he is filled with fury, for he knows that his time is short. He is on the warpath. So, battle plan number 3. Get us. Verse 13. And the dragon stood, verse 13. When the dragon saw that he had been hurled to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. That is, he's now chasing the people of God. That's you. But the woman was given the 2 wings of a great eagle so that she might fly to the place prepared for her in the desert, where she would be taken care of for a time, times, and half a time out of the serpent's reach. As the devil chases the people of God, God protects his people. He takes them to a place of safety for how long? For a time and times and, can't do that, half a time. There we are. I can't do this. A time, times and half a time. How many? 3.5. When you see 3.5, you're thinking incomplete. God's protection is there, but it's not the final protection. So what does he do next? Verse 15. Then from his mouth the serpent spewed water like a river to overtake the woman and sweep her away with a torrent. The devil calls on creation, things like water, to try and attack the woman. I wonder if he's trying to imitate God, because God destroyed his enemies with a flood, and it looks like Satan is copying him and now trying to destroy God's people with a flood. But what happens? Verse 16. The earth helped the woman by opening its mouth and swallowing the river that the dragon had spewed out of his mouth. God uses creation to actually come to the rescue of his people. What happens then? Verse 17. Then the dragon was enraged at the woman and went off to make war against the rest of her offspring. God's people through all generation, including God's people in the 21st century. Everyone who obeys God's commandments and holds to the testimony of Jesus. If you sometimes feel like Satan has got it in for you, he has. If you sometimes feel that the forces of Satan are opposed to you, they are. If sometimes it feels as a Christian that almost everything is against you, it is true, because Satan's battle plan number one, get Jesus, failed. Satan's battle plan number two, get God, failed. This is his last shot. You are his last remaining target. And his passion, his life's mission is to drag down as many of you as is absolutely possible. But here's the brilliant thing. God's protection is there anytime that you want it. And no matter what he throws at you, God is there to protect those who belong to him. Battle plan 1, get Jesus, failure. Battle plan 2, get God, result, failure. Battle plan 3, get you. What's the result of that battle? Well, you might need to work that one out. Because even though the devil has no power to compel you to follow him, sometimes we let him. The devil gives us a suggestion and we think we've got to go along with it. The devil shows us a sin and says you will enjoy it, and we agree and we do it. The devil says don't bother reading your Bible today, I've got something more interesting, and we go along with it. How is the battle going between the devil and you? And only you can answer that question. Now, if you thought that was the end of the devil's plan against you, you've underestimated him. He's now going for battle plan number 4, which is to get reinforcements. Let's have a look. To try and tear you down, Satan now brings out his big guns. And we're going to come across 2 creatures, both called beasts. Stay with us. Let's see how we go with the first beast. Chapter 13, verse 1. And I saw a beast coming out of the sea. He had 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on his horns, and on each head a blasphemous name. Now you're already learning how to interpret that. The horn is a symbol of power. 10 horns, stacks of power. 7 heads, 7, almost the complete number there. 10 crowns, he's a ruler with lots of authority. Now, that's exactly how the dragon is described. Back in chapter 12. Whoever this is, they are representing Satan. On each head there is a blasphemous name. He is opposed to God at every single opportunity. Let's read on. Verse 2. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear, and mouth like that of a lion. The dragon gave the beast his authority and his throne and great authority and power. This person has power and authority from Satan himself, and it's going to be used by Satan to try and drag people down. Verse 3. One of the heads of the beast seemed to have a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had healed. The whole world was astonished and followed the beast. Now it's interesting. Is he trying to imitate the lamb? Remember the lamb in heaven who had been slain? Is this the devil trying to copy God's plans? There's a wound which has been healed. Verse 4, men worshipped the dragon because he had given authority to the beast. And they also worshipped the beast and asked, who is like the beast? Who can stand against him? Do you see that people are starting to worship Satan, and they're starting to worship his spiritual commander, who is called the beast? Now, you may never have thought of worshipping Satan. But see, Jesus says, he says, if you're not with me, you are against me. Jesus lets us know if we're not serving the only true God, we are in fact serving Satan, whether you realise it or not. And there's a choice that needs to be made as to who you will serve. Now, this is a big decision. This is a big choice. It's not like saying, well, you know, I'm on Team Edward and I'm on Team Jacob. It's not that sort of decision. It's a decision between life and death. It's a decision between heaven and hell. It's a decision between God's future and a future without God. And let's see what happens here in verse 5. The beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies and to exercise his authority for 42 months. This commander from Satan has power, but the power is only for 42 months. Come on, 42 months, you can do it. 3.5 years, thank you, 3.5 meaning incomplete. This is not total, final authority. And he's mouthing out with God. He's blaspheming. He's saying, you can't trust God. Come on, you prayed to him and he didn't answer. You wanted God to be there and he let you down. And he blasphemes God, and sometimes we believe him. And we think, well, I didn't get what I wanted, so maybe God's forgotten about me. I didn't feel God's presence, maybe God has abandoned me. There he is, blaspheming God's name at every single opportunity, and he even hurts Christians. Verse 6. He opens his mouth to blaspheme God and to slander his name and his dwelling place and those who live in heaven. 7. He was given power to make war against the saints of the Christians, and to conquer them. And he was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. There's going to be trouble for Christians in this. God is there to protect you, but you still might be hurt along the way. Verse 8. All inhabitants of the earth will worship him, all whose names have not been written in the book of life belonging to the Lamb that was slain from the creation of the world. The whole world is going to follow the devil and his spiritual commander, except those whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life. And can I tell you now, if you've become a Christian, your name was written in the Lamb's book of life. God has recorded your name as belonging to him, and he will bring you through to his destiny in his time. This is the first beast that we meet, some sort of spiritual commander that the devil works in partnership with to try and drag you down. But the devil hasn't finished his attack plan. He has one more card to play. Let's look now at the second beast, and we're up to verse 11. Then I saw another beast coming out of the earth. He had 2 horns like a lamb, but he spoke like a dragon. Now come on, you can do this now. Horn is a symbol of power. He's only got 2 horns, so he's not as powerful as the first beast, but how are his horns described? 2 horns like a lamb. Once again, is he trying to copy what God has done, where the lamb is at the centre of the throne, the lamb who has been slain for us? This is the second commander that Satan is raising up. Verse 12. He exercised all the authority of the first beast on his behalf and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast whose fatal wound had been healed. He's there getting people to worship the first beast and to worship Satan. He even appears to do miracles. Verse 13. He performed great and miraculous signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to earth in full view of men. And people are thinking, wow, this guy is good. This guy told me stuff about myself that he could never have known. This guy made things happen that was supernatural. He must be good, therefore I'm going to follow him. I'm going to go along to his show. I'm going to find out what he's got to offer. In fact, it gets worse than that. Verse 16. He also forced everyone, small and great,
rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on his right hand or on his forehead, so that no one could buy or sell unless he had that mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of his name. This person has so much authority that people are losing their businesses over him. Unless they're following him, they don't get to trade. They don't get to buy and sell. Now, interesting what was happening in the Roman Empire at that stage. The Christians were being denied their legal right to carry on trade unless they offered their things to Caesar as emperor. Unless they bowed down and worshipped the emperor, they had restrictions of trade on them. And you know, I know Christian business people today who refuse to be dishonest. They will not do the normal tricks of business to be dishonest in the way they do their business. And guess what? Sometimes they lose money because they stand for Jesus and his principles. This commander that Satan is raising up has a whole lot of power, and a whole lot of people get dragged down. Would you like to know who it is? Because verse 18 tells us. Look at verse 18. Who is this beast? This calls for wisdom. If anyone has insight, let him calculate the number of the beast, for it is a man's number. His number is 666. The number 6, what does it mean in apocalyptic literature? It actually tells you just before it. It's the man's number. It's a human number. This is a human being. This person is not just a spiritual being. This person is a human being who has been raised up by Satan to drag people down. Who is it? Now, you know, all through history, people keep asking that question. In the Second World War, Christians thought, this must be Adolf Hitler. He is the force of Satan. And in every war, there's always someone. Maybe in every area of history, there is somebody being used by Satan this way. Maybe it's not just one person, but maybe there's always somebody who's evil enough to do horrific things and slaughter people and to cause genocide and what they like to call ethnic cleansing. And you can think of hundreds of stories that you know from the news where people have been slaughtered, innocent people, because there's an evil person in power. I like the way John puts it when he writes one of his letters. Just note this reference down, you can get back to it. 1 John 2:18. Dear children, this is the last hour, and as you have heard that the Antichrist, or the beast, is coming, even now many Antichrists have come. Anyone who is raised up by Satan to do this sort of evil is included in this. Does it make sense? The devil will do anything to try and bring you down. Man, that is a lot of material. If right now you're thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know if I can cope with this, can I simplify it for you? There are 2 traps that you need to avoid. Here's the first one. Don't underestimate the devil. Don't underestimate the devil. The devil is not some cute little playthings wearing red leotards and holding a little pitching fork with a couple of marshmallows on the end. That is not Satan. He loves it when we believe that. He's not the guy that makes everything fun. Ooh, the devil made me do it. He's not the guy that somehow has fun on his side and introduces fun to make everything sound more interesting. He is a powerful spiritual being whose every intention is to drag you down. He is actually a more powerful being than you are. And his mission is to drag you down at every possible opportunity. And here's what worries me. Sometimes we think we're invincible. Sometimes we think, well, I'm a Christian, I'm strong, I don't have to worry about that. I can wander into Satan's territory and it's not going to worry me. And I hear of high schoolers who go to things like seances, trying to contact the dead. That is Satan's territory, and you underestimate Satan when you just waltz into those things. I've heard of guys who get Ouija boards, you know, the board out there, you put the glass on, everyone holds hands, it moves round. That is Satan's territory. You can't go in there and think you're invincible. You need to understand he is powerful. Some of you say, oh yes, I love Jesus, I worship Jesus, I jump up and down and get excited about Jesus. But then you go and live a life which says, I'm actually following the devil, I'm actually sinning. I do the Christian bit in here and I go back there and I just live the way I want. Don't underestimate the devil. He is a powerful, powerful being, and he is opposed to every single one of you. Now, some of you are aware of it. You feel that oppression. You feel his temptations. You feel how he rattles your cage when he doesn't like what you're doing. Some of you are aware of it and some of you aren't. But I can guarantee from the Bible, he is there to attack and to try and destroy you. And of course, there's no end of films and TV shows that are sort of interested in the supernatural. And some of them are quite fun to watch. But there's a real interest. Shows like Supernatural. Even the wizardry in Harry Potter. Or the film Paranormal Activity. Ghost Whisperer. Now, nothing wrong with them on that level, but there's a real interest in just skating around the edges of where Satan's domain is. And as soon as you talk about Satan being powerful and dragging people down, somebody says, look, does that mean I can be demon possessed? Does that mean the devil can possess me? It's an interesting question. I've been involved with young people in Christian ministry for around 35 years. There has been one incident where it seemed that the person I was dealing with was actually possessed by demons. It was some years ago. I got a call from a mother. Now, they didn't come to our church, but their 14-year-old son came along to our youth groups. And she said, look, I'm really worried. He hasn't slept. He can't get to sleep at night. He's terrified. He believes he is possessed by demons. Could you come over? I get all the interesting calls. So I went over and talked with him, and he was a nice, quiet 14-year-old kid. And he kept describing that when he went to sleep, he just had these visions of satanic figures hovering over him with swords and axes, and it was blood, and he was terrified. He could not sleep at night. He would lie awake the whole night. And he said, I want to get rid of them. I want them out of my life. I don't want to be oppressed by Satan this way. I feel like I'm possessed by his demons. Now, I know enough about the Bible to know that demons don't go and possess anyone unless the person invites them. They're not just going to, be hiding behind the bush and sneak out and jump on you like a drop bear. I know enough from the Bible. Demons don't possess anyone unless the person invites them. And I was saying, but do you want... No, I hate this. I do not want Satan in my life whatsoever. I said, well, just tell me about, what you're doing with your life, spare time, what do you do for kicks? And he started to describe a life which was totally serving Satan. He talked about how he and his mates would go and vandalise the local neighbourhood, how they'd spray graffiti everywhere. Talked about breaking into the local scout hall and defecating in the middle and just leaving it there. He described the shoplifting that he and his friends got up to. He described how they wagged school when they were meant to be there. He described how they vandalised cars. And he's talking about all this. And in his bedroom, there were posters. Now, there's nothing wrong with posters. These were really satanic posters. There were people sacrificing children in fire. It was savage stuff. I had listened to some of the music that he liked to listen to. It was at the really satanic end. I don't just mean it was like, heavy and loud, but it was people worshipping Satan in the music. And he's saying to me, I don't want Satan in my life. I said, buddy, the way you're living, you're saying, I absolutely want Satan in my life. It makes sense to me you're having a problem. Your words are saying, I don't want him, but your life is saying, come on in. Eventually he pleaded with me. He said, will you pray to get rid of these demons from my life? And I said to him, I love you too much to do that. He looked at me. He said, will you just pray that the demons leave me? And I said, no, I love you too much to do that. He said, what do you mean? I said, it says in the Bible that a demon is cast out and the person's life is made whole again. It's like having a really messy bedroom or a really messy cabin. And somehow, when the demons go, it gets cleaned out. And a person's life is cleaned out when the demons are cast out. And they're fresh and they're new and they're empty and there's nobody living there. And so the demons gather up all their friends who are worse than them, and 7 of them come back because the house has been cleaned out. Talks about that in the Bible. And I said, I'm not going to pray for demons to leave you and leave you empty for any other demon to come back in. I care about you too much to do that. And then we talked about what happens when Jesus comes into your life. That Jesus has won a victory over the devil and all his demons. And then when Jesus takes up residence in your life, there is no room for you to be possessed by anybody except the Spirit of God. And I chatted to him for a while and he seemed genuinely ready to give his life to Jesus. That's what I prayed for. That Jesus would come into his life, that he would change his eternity, that he would forgive his sins and deal with any problems he was having. He asked Jesus into his life. He smiled. Everything was fine. I drove home. What I didn't realise was that after I drove home, all hell broke loose. His mother rang me the next day to say he was racing around the house, he was screaming, he was terrified, he was rolling over, And then he had his first sleep in a month. And peace was restored to him. Now, I don't know what has happened since. But seriously, in 35 years of working with young people, that's actually my only experience in someone who was possessed in that way by demons. But there is no record in the Bible of anybody who is filled with the Spirit of God ever being possessed by demons. Because when you are owned by Jesus, when you are inhabited by the Spirit of God, there is no room for demons to possess you. If you belong to Jesus today, you don't need to worry that that's about to happen. But the warning here is the devil will harass you. The devil will be there to tempt you. The devil will make life difficult for you. But if you have Christ in you, then you have the power to overcome. 1 John 4 verse 4, the Spirit who is in you is greater than the spirit who is in the world. There's the first trap to avoid. Don't underestimate the devil. Trap number 2, don't underestimate God. It's not you versus the devil. It's God versus the devil, and you're hiding behind him. Come on, you know what it's like when you're getting tempted. What do you do when temptation comes knocking at your door? What do you do when the devil's at your front door offering you temptation? I tell you what I do. When the devil's knocking at my front door, I say, Jesus, could you get the door for me? And he fights the battles. Don't underestimate the power of God. If you've given your life to Jesus, then he's won the victory for you. If you're possessed by the Spirit of God, then that Spirit will bring you through to the future that God has for you. You don't take the devil on your own terms, but hiding behind Jesus, he fights a victory, he wins it, the devil is defeated, and nothing can destroy you. No matter what the devil throws at you, if he throws a flood at you, if he throws his false prophet at you, if he throws his beast at you, if he throws his dragon at you, no matter what the devil throws at you, there is nothing. And there is no one who can ever separate you from the love of God which is yours in Christ Jesus. If you belong to Jesus, there is nothing that can separate you from God's love. It's put this way in Romans chapter 8. Just note it down. Romans 8:35. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Trouble? Hardship? Persecution? Famine? Nakedness? Danger or sword? No. In all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. Here we go. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Jesus has won the victory, and when you join up with Jesus, that victory is your victory. Here's a simple question. In the way you live your life today, in the way you live your life this year, will you keep giving in to the devil and giving him a victory he doesn't deserve? Or will you claim the victory of Jesus, who smashed the devil's power when he rose and died for you? That is a question which you must answer. Will you keep giving in to the devil and give him a victory he doesn't deserve? Or today, will you claim the victory of Jesus and live in a way that tells the devil to get lost?